poor little girl washes windows to buy milk. But when the young billionaire sees her hurt hands, he asks, "Who told you to do this?" And her answer brings him to tears. The clock read 7:43 a.m. when Logan Carter locked eyes with his own reflection in the rearview mirror. He didn't like what he saw. The dark circles betrayed another sleepless night, just one of many. He tightened the knot of his navy blue tie, as though that small adjustment could fix not just his attire, but the persistent feeling that something was out of place. It wasn't the tie. The rain fell relentlessly, turning the streets of Boston into dark mirrors. Drops streamed down the BMW's windshield, blurring the city lights into a confused haze. A scene that matched his thoughts perfectly. The windshield wipers moved in their usual rhythm, predictable, automatic, like his life. Meeting at 9, lunch with clients at noon, gym at 6, dinner alone at 8, sleep or try to at 11. The perfect routine for a 38-year-old man who had more digits in his bank account than actual memories. The light turned red. Logan braked and drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. It was the third red light in less than 10 minutes. Traffic was worse than usual. He picked up his phone and checked once more the email he had received the night before. The subject line was straightforward, just as he liked. Johnson and Mayer's merger. Final documents. The deal that had consumed 6 months of his life as a corporate lawyer would close today. He should feel accomplished. It was his biggest case of the year. Yet he felt a hollow sensation in his chest. A movement outside the window caught his attention. At first he thought it was just the rain intensifying, until he made out a small figure approaching. A tiny silhouette, wearing a faded yellow raincoat 3 sizes too big. A child. Instinctively, Logan locked the doors. The city was dangerous, and he had been taught to be wary. The child approached the driver's side window, holding a damp cloth in her small hands. The hood of the coat slipped, revealing the face of a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. "What the hell?" Logan muttered, looking around for a responsible adult nearby. There was no one. The girl began wiping the windshield, making it dirtier rather than cleaner. Her movements were small and clumsy, as if she had just learned the task. Rainwater ran down her face, mingling with what Logan realized, with a lump in his throat, were tears. Something strange stirred inside him, a discomfort unlike any he was used to. It wasn't the irritation of being late, nor the anxiety of big cases, nor even the usual indifference with which he navigated the city's problems. This was something else, something he hadn't felt in so long he had almost forgotten. Indignation. He rolled down the window a few inches, enough to speak, but not enough for the rain to get in. Hey, little girl," he called, surprised at the gentleness in his own voice. She stopped, startled, like a small animal expecting a blow. Her eyes, Logan noticed, were a deep brown, too big for her pale, thin face. "What are you doing here? Where are your parents?" The girl squeezed the wet cloth between her fingers, wringing it nervously. "I'm cleaning your car, sir," she answered in such a low voice that he had to lean forward to hear. "To earn money." Logan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. "What's your name?" "Ellie." "Ellie, are you here alone? Where's your mom or dad?" Her gaze dropped. "My mom went to heaven. I live with my stepdad." The light turned green, and the cars behind him began to honk. Logan ignored them. Something about the way she said that kept him from simply handing her a coin and moving on. "Did your stepdad tell you to do this? Stand in the rain cleaning windshields?" She shook her head, sending droplets flying from her wet hair. "He just said I needed to bring money home if I don't." She didn't finish the sentence, but her look said it all. Logan's stomach twisted. The honking increased, but he remained still. "How old are you, Ellie?" 5. 5 years old. Walking alone in the rain in traffic on one of the city's busiest avenues. 5 years old and worried about bringing money home. At that moment, Logan knew he couldn't just drive away. What happened next was so out of character for him that later he would question if it had really been him making that decision. "Get in the car, Ellie, I'll take you home." Her eyes grew wide, distrustful. "I'm not going to hurt you," he assured her, with a gentleness he hadn't used in years. "I just want to make sure you get home safely, and I need to talk to your stepdad." After a moment of hesitation, She walked around and climbed in through the passenger door he unlocked. The smell of damp clothing and despair flooded the luxury car's interior. Logan took off his suit jacket and handed it to her. "Here, wrap yourself in this." As he maneuvered out of traffic, Logan tried to organize his thoughts. What was he doing? Taking a stranger's child? It ran contrary to everything he considered sensible, but there was something in her eyes, something that reminded him of himself a long time ago. "Where do you live, Ellie?" "On Parkman Street," she answered, now a bit less tense. "Number 43, apartment 2B. Logan recognized the address. It was in the far eastern part of the city, nowhere near his usual route, a place known for high crime rates and poverty. During the drive, Ellie remained silent, watching the raindrops streaming down the window and tracing their path with her small finger. Occasionally, she seemed lost in thought. "Ellie?" Logan broke the silence. "What happens if you don't bring money home?" She didn't reply right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was even softer. "Roy gets angry. Sometimes he breaks things. Sometimes—" She hesitated. "Sometimes he won't let me eat." Logan gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. Indignation now boiled inside him, morphing into a rare anger he seldom allowed himself to feel. In 20 minutes, they arrived at a worn 3-story building. The paint peeled off the walls and several light bulbs in the entryway were burned out. "It's here," Ellie pointed, suddenly apprehensive. "Let's go," said Logan, parking in front of the building. Together they climbed stairs that smelled of mold and cheap disinfectant. On the second floor, Ellie stopped in front of a door with peeling paint and the number 2B hanging by a single nail. "Is this where you live?" She nodded, biting her lower lip. "Do you have a key?" "No, I have to knock." Logan knocked 3 times, nothing. He knocked again, harder. After almost a minute, they heard shuffling steps and the sound of something being knocked over. The door opened, revealing a man about 45 years old, unshaven, with greasy hair and bloodshot eyes. He wore a stained t-shirt and shabby sweatpants. The smell of alcohol was so strong that Logan stepped back. "Who the hell are you?" Roy asked, ignoring Ellie entirely. "My name is Logan Carter. I found Ellie cleaning windshields by herself on Boylston Street in the rain, alone." Roy looked at Ellie as if only now noticing her presence. "So what did you bring?" he asked her, unconcerned about Logan. The girl trembled, clearly afraid. "Nothing, Roy, I'm sorry." The man stepped toward her menacingly. Logan instinctively placed himself between them. "Can we talk?" Logan asked, voice controlled yet firm. Roy spat on the floor. "What's this social services, the cops? I've got nothing to say." "Neither. I'm just a citizen concerned about a 5-year-old child begging for money in the rain. What I do with her is my problem," Roy retorted, folding his arms. "She lives under my roof, eats my food. She's got to help out." Logan took a deep breath, trying to rein in his anger. "I understand times are hard, but there are other ways, assistance programs." "Listen here, rich boy," Roy interrupted, his alcoholic breath hitting Logan. "I don't need a lecture from anyone, least of all some suit who knows nothing about my life. She has to help out. If she doesn't bring money, she doesn't eat. Simple as that." The words hit Logan like a punch. The cynicism, the casual cruelty. He looked around and noticed for the first time the interior of the apartment. Empty bottles scattered on the floor, leftover food on the table, clothes tossed about. There were no toys, no children's books, nothing to indicate a child lived there, except a small colorful drawing taped to the wall, as out of place as a flower in a desert. He saw Ellie shrink against the wall, clutching his jacket to her chest like a shield. Saw the fear in her eyes, the kind of fear no child should know, and he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "This little girl isn't spending another night here." Roy laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "And who's going to stop me? You? She's my legal responsibility." Logan took a step forward, surprising even himself with his resolve. "If you're truly responsible for her, prove it. Show me the custody documents. Show me she goes to school. Show me she's well taken care of." Roy hesitated, and Logan knew he'd struck a nerve. "Go to hell," Roy muttered, staggering slightly. "Take her if you want, one less mouth to feed. She always comes back, nowhere else to go." Logan felt a wave of disgust and pity. This man didn't care about Ellie, not really. She was just a means to get money. He turned to the girl, who watched the scene with wide eyes. He knelt down to her level. "Ellie, do you want to come with me? I can take you somewhere safe." She looked from Roy to Logan. A silent battle flickered in those big eyes, fear of the known versus fear of the unknown. "Will you send me back?" she asked, her voice so small it broke Logan's heart. "No, I promise I won't." She nodded slowly, and Logan took her small, cold hand. "You're coming with me, now." Roy stepped toward them, but he tripped over an empty bottle and almost fell. "This isn't over," he threatened, clinging to the doorframe. "I'll come after you, you son of a—" Logan didn't wait to hear the rest. He guided Ellie into the hallway, down the stairs, and back to the car, his heart hammering in his chest. What was he doing? Was this kidnapping or a rescue? His lawyer's mind began listing all the laws he was likely breaking. But then he felt Ellie's small hand tighten around his fragile grip, desperate for something to hold, and he knew he couldn't have done anything differently. Inside the car, the silence was heavy. The rain had eased, but the skies remained gray. Logan glanced at Ellie, who looked even smaller in the wide passenger seat. "Are you okay?" he asked, knowing it was a foolish question. She nodded, staring straight ahead. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. "A simple question, a complicated answer. To my home," Logan said, realizing he was only now thinking of that detail. "For now, I'll take care of you, Ellie. No one's sending you into the rain again. No one's going to tell you that you can only eat if you bring money home." As he drove, he tried not to think about the complications that would follow. What his colleagues would say, the legal ramifications, the changes he would have to make. He focused on the present, a 5-year-old girl saved from the rain and hunger, an impulsive decision that defied everything he thought he knew about himself. Stopping at another red light, he glanced over and saw that Ellie had fallen asleep. Her face relaxed for the first time since he found her. The vulnerability of that image hit him like a wave. What was happening to him? The man who lived by numbers, contracts, and predictability now drove home with an unknown child in his luxury car. The light turned green. Logan accelerated gently so as not to wake Ellie. While driving, he realized he had completely forgotten about his meeting, the big merger, everything that had seemed so vital just that morning. Now only one thing mattered, the small being asleep beside him, whose trust he had gained with a promise that he somehow knew would change his life forever. The key turned in the lock with a soft click. Logan pushed the door open and turned on the lights, revealing an apartment that looked like it belonged in a home decor magazine. Minimalist, organized, impeccable. Shades of gray, black, and white dominated the space. Nothing out of place. "Come in," he told Ellie, who hovered at the entrance as if afraid to contaminate the immaculate space with her presence. The girl's eyes roamed the open layout. From the door, one could see the living room with leather sofas, the gourmet kitchen with a marble countertop, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights beginning to glow at dusk. An entirely different world from apartment 2B on Parkman Street. "You live here?" Ellie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Logan replied, noticing for the first time how cold the place seemed. Sterile. "Come in, let's go." Ellie took a few hesitant steps, still clutching the borrowed jacket to her chest. Her muddy sneakers left small marks on the light hardwood floor, something that, on any other day, would have greatly bothered Logan. Today, he barely noticed. "So you must be hungry," he said, heading to the kitchen. He opened the fridge and stared at its nearly empty shelves. A few takeout containers, a bottle of wine, mineral water, and not much else. "I don't have much here. I usually order in." Ellie didn't reply. She stood where she was, watching everything intently and warily. "How about a sandwich? I have bread and ham-dot cheese, I think." The girl nodded slightly. Logan had the odd feeling she would have agreed to anything he suggested. As he prepared the most basic sandwich possible, Logan tried to organize his thoughts. What had he just done? He had taken a child from her home without any legal authority to do so. Even if the conditions were awful, even if the stepdad was negligent, the law had a process, and he, as an attorney, knew that better than anyone. But then he looked at Ellie. standing like a tiny statue in the middle of his living room, and he knew he couldn't have simply left her in that environment. "Here," he said, putting the sandwich on a plate and adding a glass of milk beside it. "Come sit down." She approached, climbed onto the tall kitchen stool with some difficulty, and stared at the food as though it were extraordinary. "Thank you," she murmured before taking her first bite. She ate slowly, chewing carefully, as if wanting the food to last as long as possible. Logan sat on the other side of the counter, trying not to stare too intently at her, yet unable to look away. There was something mesmerizing about how this small being occupied his space, like a dissonant note in a perfectly orchestrated symphony that somehow made the music more interesting. "Do you like cheese?" he asked, immediately feeling foolish for asking something so trivial. Ellie nodded, taking a sip of milk. A white mustache formed above her upper lip. "Roy never buys cheese," she commented, surprising Logan with the remark. "He says it's too expensive." The mention of the stepdad jolted Logan back to the reality of the situation. What would the man do when he realized what had happened? Call the police? That was the most likely reaction. "Ellie," Logan began, choosing his words carefully, "do you understand what happened today, why I brought you here?" She paused and looked at him with those large, serious eyes. "Because Roy is mean," she said simply, "and you're nice." The simplicity of her answer disarmed him. Nice. He had never considered himself particularly nice, competent, sure, successful, certainly. But nice? That was a quality he rarely thought about. "I just didn't want you staying there," he explained. "No child should live like that." "Am I going to live here now?" she asked, a note of hope in her voice that made Logan's heart constrict. "For now," he replied, because he didn't know what else to say. He couldn't make promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Ellie went back to eating, apparently satisfied with the vague answer. Logan realized she was used to not receiving guarantees in life. After the snack, the question of a bath arose. The main bathroom looked intimidating with its deep tub and rainfall shower, so Logan took her to the guest bathroom. "Can you bathe on your own?" he asked, completely out of his comfort zone. "Yes," Ellie replied. "But—" She hesitated, looking at her worn backpack that they had brought from the apartment. "I don't have clean clothes." Logan hadn't thought of that. "You can wear one of my t-shirts for tonight. Tomorrow we'll buy you some clothes." While she bathed, with the door slightly ajar at Logan's insistence, worried she might slip or drown, he made 3 phone calls. First to his office, inventing a family emergency to justify his absence. Second to a delivery service, ordering basic groceries, including cereal, fruit and other items he imagined a child would eat. Third, to Rachel Munro, a family law attorney he had worked with on a case years ago. Rachel answered on the 3rd ring. "Logan Carter," she said, sounding surprised. "To what do I owe the honor after so long?" "Rachel, I need advice, legal and discreet." A pause. "I'm listening." "Hypothetically speaking, if someone rescued a child from a clearly abusive environment, what would be the legal implications?" Another longer pause. "Logan, what have you done?" He took a deep breath. "Tomorrow, can we meet tomorrow? It's too complicated to explain over the phone." "This sounds serious. My office, 9 in the morning. "I'll be there, thanks, Rachel." He hung up just in time to hear the shower water turn off. A few minutes later, Ellie emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel far too large for her small frame, her wet hair plastered to her face. Logan handed her a black t-shirt that practically swallowed her. Without the dirty clothes and with clean skin, bruises on her arms became visible yellowish marks in various stages of healing. Seeing them made Logan clench his teeth. If he had any doubts about his decision, they vanished at that moment. "Are you sleepy?" he asked, checking the time. Almost 9 p.m., late for a 5-year-old, he supposed. Ellie nodded, rubbing her eyes. The apartment had 2 bedrooms, the master and one he used as a home office. Neither was equipped for a child. "You can sleep in my room," he offered. "I'll sleep on the couch." She looked at the leather sofa in the living room. "Can I sleep on the sofa?" she asked. "On the sofa, but the bed's more comfortable." Ellie looked uncomfortable. "It's too big and dark." Logan understood. A strange room, a strange bed. Everything was unfamiliar and possibly frightening. "Okay, the sofa it is." He fetched a pillow and soft blankets. improvising a small bed on the large modular couch. Ellie climbed up and settled in, looking tiny amidst all those blankets. "Want anything else? A glass of milk, maybe?" To his surprise, she nodded. "Warm milk?" "Warm milk," he repeated, heading back to the kitchen. While heating the milk in the microwave, he realized he knew absolutely nothing about taking care of a child. Should he brush her teeth? Read her a story? Leave a light on? He returned with the warm milk in a large mug and found her gazing out the window, watching the city lights. When she noticed him, she quickly returned to the sofa. "Here you go." She took the mug with both hands, blowing on the surface before taking a small sip. "Thank you," she said softly. Logan sat on the edge of the sofa, feeling strangely out of place in his own home. "Ellie," he began, unsure how to broach the subject, "tomorrow I'm going to speak with a lawyer friend. She's going to help us." "Are you going to send me back?" Ellie interrupted, her eyes suddenly alarmed. "No," Logan assured her quickly. "I promised, remember, but we need to do things the right way so that nobody can take you back." She seemed to accept the explanation, though a shadow of worry lingered on her face. She kept sipping her milk in small gulps. You know," Logan said, trying to distract her, "I've never had anyone sleep on this sofa before. You're my first visitor in a very long time." "You don't have friends?" Ellie asked, childlike frankness catching him off guard. Logan gave a small smile. "I have co-workers. Not really the same thing." "I didn't have friends at my school," she commented, looking at her milk. "The other kids said I smelled bad." The simplicity with which she stated this made Logan's heart ache. "Which school did you go to?" "I was in kindergarten at Sunnybrook, but Roy said it was too expensive even though it was public. He didn't like getting up early to take me." Logan made a mental note to look into that school tomorrow. If she wasn't currently enrolled anywhere, that could complicate things further. Ellie finished her milk and handed the mug back to Logan. Her eyes were heavy with sleep. "Time for bed," he said, adjusting the blankets around her. Hesitating, he added, "If you need anything during the night, just call me. I'll be in the bedroom, first door on the right." She nodded, settling between the pillows. "Do you want me to leave a light on?" he asked, remembering his own childhood fear of the dark something he hadn't recalled in decades. "Yes, please," she replied, voice almost a whisper. Logan left the lamp on the side table lit, adjusting it to its lowest level. The soft glow created a cozy circle around the sofa, like a small island of safety. "Good night, Ellie." "Good night, Logan." He walked away, hesitated, then returned. For some reason, he felt he should say or do something more, but what? He ended up just adjusting the blanket again and heading to his room, leaving the door open so he could hear her if she called. Once in bed, Logan couldn't sleep. His mind raced, conjuring and discarding scenario after scenario, assessing risks, planning next steps. Beneath all that frenetic mental activity, one question persisted. What had changed in him? What had driven him to act so impulsively, so contrary to his analytical nature? The apartment's silence, once so familiar and comfortable, now felt different. It was a silence inhabited, filled by the breathing presence of another human being, a presence so small, yet so transformative. Some time later, when he was finally starting to drift off, he heard a faint sound. He rose immediately and went to the living room. Ellie was sitting on the sofa, knees pulled up, eyes wide in the dim light. "Are you okay?" he asked, approaching carefully so as not to startle her. She shook her head. "I had a bad dream." Logan sat beside her, unsure what to do. After a moment of hesitation, he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Want to talk about it?" Ellie looked at him, weighing whether she could trust him. "It was about my mom," she finally said. "I dreamed she was calling for me, but I couldn't find her." Compassion flooded Logan. "You miss her a lot, don't you?" She nodded, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "What was she like, your mom?" A small smile appeared on Ellie's face, as fragile as the first ray of sun after a storm. "She was beautiful. She used to sing to me before bed. She braided my hair." The use of the past tense did not go unnoticed by Logan. He wanted to ask more, how her mother had died, how she ended up with that awful stepdad, but he didn't want to push. "She sounds wonderful," he said softly. "She's in heaven now," Ellie said, with the simple conviction of a child. That's what the nurse told me, that she went to heaven and that she watches over me from there. A nurse? Logan couldn't help asking. From the hospital, Ellie explained, as if it were obvious. Mum was in the hospital for a long time. She was always tired and thin, so thin you could see her bones. Cancer, Logan thought immediately, or some other degenerative disease. And after she went to heaven, you stayed with Roy. Ellie nodded. He was Mom's boyfriend, but he doesn't like me much. He only stayed with me because Mom asked him to. And when was that, Ellie? Do you remember? She frowned, concentrating. It was in the winter. There was snow, lots of snow. A few months then, Logan calculated. The last heavy snow had been in January. Do you draw your mom sometimes to remember her? Ellie's face lit up. Yes, I draw her every day so I don't forget what she looks like. Would you like to draw now? Logan suggested, thinking it might help calm her after the nightmare. I have paper and some colored pens in my office. Ellie hesitated. Can I really? Of course. He fetched a pad of paper and some colored pens he used for marking documents. Not proper art supplies, but they would do. Ellie sat on the coffee table and began to draw with intense concentration, tongue peeking out between her lips as she worked. After a few minutes, she turned the paper to show him. The drawing was simplistic, as one would expect from a 5-year-old, but it had a surprising emotional quality. A female figure with long hair and a big smile, wearing what appeared to be a floral dress. That's my mom, Ellie explained. Sarah, she liked flowers. She had a flower dress that was her favorite. It's a lovely drawing, Logan said, genuinely impressed. You draw very well for your age. Ellie grinned, the first real smile he'd seen on her face. Can I draw some more? She asked, suddenly excited, the first time she had been so since he found her. As many as you want. She leaned over the paper again, starting another drawing. This time it showed 2 figures, the same woman and a small girl holding hands. That's me and Mom, she explained. At the park. We used to go every Sunday before she got sick. What did you do at the park? We fed the ducks. She pushed me on the swing. Sometimes she bought ice cream, but it was a secret because the doctor said she couldn't have sweets. As Ellie continued drawing and recounting small stories about her mother, Logan realized he was witnessing something precious. Ellie was not only sharing her memories, but also forging a connection with him, a fragile bridge of trust. Roy doesn't like my drawings, she said as she started a third one. He says it's a waste of time and paper once he tore them all up. Anger flared again in Logan's chest. Well, I like your drawings, and here you can draw as much as you want. She looked at him, eyes shining. Promise? I promise. Ellie returned to her drawing, more relaxed now. This new one showed a house, not the depressing apartment where she lived with Roy, but a little house with a chimney, a garden, and a smiling sun in the sky. That was our house before, she explained. When Mom got sick, we had to sell it and move to a smaller apartment. That's when Roy moved in with us. To help pay the rent, Mom said. The pieces were falling into place. A single mother gravely ill with no resources, a boyfriend who offered to help, maybe initially with good intentions, maybe not. And when she died, he stayed with the daughter, likely just an informal arrangement, possibly not even legal. Ellie, do you go to school now? Logan asked, trying to understand her current situation better. She shook her head. Roy said it's too far and that I'll go next year, but I liked school. Miss Miller gave me gold stars on my drawings. Another issue to address, Logan thought. A 5-year-old should be in school. Ellie's eyes began to droop again, her pencil moving more slowly on the paper. I think it's time to go back to bed, he suggested gently. She didn't protest, carefully putting the pens away before returning to the sofa. Logan tucked her in again. Can I keep my drawings? She asked sleepily. Of course. We'll leave them right here on the table so you can see them when you wake up. She smiled, eyes already closing. Thanks, Logan. You're welcome, Ellie. Logan stayed there watching as she fell asleep. Her face, once tense and cautious, now relaxed, almost serene. The change was remarkable. He returned to his bedroom but left the door fully open this time. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, he thought about everything he had learned. An orphaned girl, left in the care of a man who clearly saw her as a burden, maybe even a source of income. A child with no school, no protection, no one to stand up for her. Until now. Logan closed his eyes, aware that his life had changed irreversibly in the last 12 hours. The man who woke up that morning lonely, focused only on his career, living an orderly and predictable existence, no longer existed. In his place stood a man with a little girl sleeping on his couch, a man who had made a promise he wasn't sure how to fulfill, but was determined to keep. The last thing he thought before falling asleep was Ellie's drawing of the little house with the smiling sun. It wasn't just a memory of her past, he realized. It was also a hope for the future, a safe home. And somehow, however unlikely, he wanted to be part of that future. Rachel Monroe's office occupied the 10th floor of a building in the financial district. Unlike the cold corporate style that dominated most law firms in the city, this office had a welcoming air. Real plants in the corners, colorful paintings on the walls, and a genuinely smiling receptionist. Logan held Ellie's hand while they waited in the lobby. The girl was especially quiet that morning, perhaps sensing his tension. She wore new clothes, just a simple outfit he had bought at the nearest department store as soon as it opened. Nothing fancy, just the basics so she wouldn't have to wear the same clothes as the day before. "Mr. Carter," the receptionist called, "Dr. Monroe will see you now." Logan stood, adjusting his tie in a nervous gesture. "Come on, Ellie." Rachel was standing when they walked into her office. A woman in her 40s with short brown hair, red-framed glasses, and a shrewd smile. Her gaze quickly assessed Logan, then settled on Ellie with professional interest. "Logan," she greeted, extending her hand. "It's been a while." Then she leaned down slightly, meeting Ellie's eye level. "And you must be Ellie. It's very nice to meet you." Ellie partially hid behind Logan's leg, just giving a shy wave. "Please have a seat," Rachel said, motioning to the chairs. "Logan, I have to say I'm curious. When you called yesterday, I pictured many scenarios, but none of them involved you showing up with a child." Logan took a deep breath and began telling everything from the moment he saw Ellie cleaning windshields in the rain to the confrontation with Roy and the impulsive decision to bring her along. Rachel listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting down notes, her face maintaining a neutral, professional expression. "And last night she told me about her mother," Logan concluded. "Sarah. She died recently, apparently from a serious illness. Roy was just the boyfriend, not the biological father. And from what I understand, Ellie isn't even in school right now." Rachel nodded, setting her pen on the notepad. She looked at Ellie, who was flipping through a magazine on the coffee table. "Ellie, sweetheart, would you mind waiting outside with Denise, our receptionist? She has some children's books and maybe some colored pencils for you to draw with. I need to talk to Mr. Logan about grown-up things." The girl looked at Logan for approval. He nodded encouragingly. "It's okay, I'll be right here and I can see you through the glass door." Ellie agreed silently and left the office. Rachel waited until the door closed to speak again. "Logan," she began, her tone serious, "I'll be direct, what you did was technically kidnapping." Logan felt his stomach sink, though he had expected as much. "I know your intentions were good," she continued, "and from what you've described, the girl's situation was precarious, possibly abusive. But there are legal procedures for these cases. You should have contacted Child Protective Services." "And what would they have done?" Logan asked, frustration creeping into his voice. "Placed her in a shelter? Or worse, sent her back to Roy while they investigated? You know how the system works, Rachel. It's slow and flawed." Rachel sighed, removing her glasses and rubbing the bridge of her nose. "Yes, the system is imperfect, but now we're in a tricky spot. If that man Roy decides to report Ellie's disappearance, you'll be the prime suspect. After all, you went to his house and left with the girl." Logan felt a shiver run down his spine. He practically said he didn't care one less mouth to feed. "That may work in our favor, but it doesn't remove the legal issue." Rachel put her glasses back on. "Logan, I'm going to ask some tough questions. Are you prepared for what's ahead? Because it won't be easy." He nodded firmly. "If we file for temporary custody on your behalf, it'll be a battle. There will be investigations, social workers, hearings. Your life will be turned upside down, your background, finances, home, everything will be scrutinized." "I'm aware. Do you have any experience with children? Any nieces, godchildren?" Logan hesitated. No, I'm an only child and my few close friends don't have kids. Rachel studied him for a moment. Why are you doing this, Logan, really? We've known each other long enough, to be honest. The question surprised him, not because he lacked an answer, but because he didn't know how to articulate it. I can't fully explain, he began, searching for the right words. When I saw her in the rain, so small and vulnerable, something changed in me. Then seeing how she lived, how that man treated her. He shook his head, frustrated by his inability to convey his feelings. She doesn't deserve that, Rachel. Nobody does, especially not a child. And if I can do something, I should. It's the right thing. Rachel watched him in silence for a few seconds, as though gauging his sincerity. Well, she finally said, at least your motivation seems genuine. But you must understand that the authorities won't care about your feelings. They'll want to know if you can take care of a child. You do have financial stability. That's not an issue. But do you have time, willingness, patience? Kids need far more than money and good intentions, Logan. I know, and I'm willing to learn to adapt. I already have, in fact. Rachel gave a small smile. I've noticed. I never imagined seeing you holding a child's hand, let alone buying children's clothes. Logan glanced through the glass door. Ellie was in the reception area, drawing something with intense focus. What about immediate legal matters, he asked, turning back to Rachel. What do we do next? First, she grabbed a new notepad. We gather all the information we can. The mother's full name, exact date of death, hospital where she was treated. We need to find out if there's any official documentation giving Roy custody, or if it was just a verbal arrangement. And we need info on Roy himself, full name, criminal record, if he has any legal right to the girl. Logan nodded, mentally trying to recall what Ellie had mentioned. Second, Rachel continued, we file for an emergency temporary custody petition citing risk. That'll give you some legal standing while we investigate further. For that, we need to document the conditions she lived in and any signs of abuse or neglect. She has bruises, Logan remembered. There are marks on her arms. We need a doctor to examine and officially document that. I know some who serve as experts in custody cases. I'll schedule an appointment today if possible. Rachel made a few more notes. And we need Ellie evaluated by a child psychologist. That will help establish her emotional state and corroborate any accounts of mistreatment. The list of tasks was growing, and Logan felt overwhelmed but also relieved to have a concrete plan. It'll be costly, Rachel warned, not just financially but in time and emotional energy. Are you truly ready for this? Logan looked at Ellie through the glass door again. She had finished a drawing and was proudly showing it to the receptionist, who smiled and praised her work. I am, he answered with a certainty he didn't know he possessed until that moment. We'll do whatever it takes. Rachel smiled, warmer now. Great, because I'll need a fully committed client to win this battle. She stood, indicating the consultation was over. I'll start the legal procedures today. Meanwhile, keep things low-key. Keep Ellie at home. Don't take her to public places unnecessarily. We don't want to draw attention until we at least have temporary custody on record. Logan nodded, feeling both anxious and determined. And Logan, Rachel added before opening the door, you're doing something extraordinary. Many people would see a problem and keep walking. You decided to stop and make a difference. That says a lot about you. He didn't know how to respond, unaccustomed to such praise. Thank you for helping me, he finally said. That's what I'm here for, she replied. Now let's go get your little artist. The ride back home was quiet. Ellie looked out the window, hugging a children's book Rachel had given her. Logan tried to process everything he and Rachel had discussed, mentally organizing the steps ahead. Logan, Ellie's small voice broke the silence. Yes? Where are we going now? There was something about the simplicity of the question that touched Logan deeply. It wasn't just about their immediate destination. It was about her future, about what would happen to her. Home, he answered. My home, our home for now. Ellie nodded, apparently satisfied with the answer, then asked, what if Roy comes to get me? Logan tightened his grip on the wheel. He won't, Ellie, I won't let him. That's why we talked to Rachel. She'll help us make sure you stay with me. For how long? The question caught Logan off guard. For how long? He hadn't thought that far. He was dealing with immediate emergencies. the legal steps required to keep her safe. But what would happen next? "For as long as you want," he finally said, surprised by his own words. Ellie's eyes widened slightly. "I can choose?" "Yes." Logan realized he was becoming more committed to the situation than he had ever imagined. "You can choose." She was quiet for a moment, pondering, before saying, "I want to stay with you. You're kind and you have milk." Logan couldn't help smiling. The direct, simple logic of a child kindness and milk, enough to earn her trust. "Then it's decided," he said. "You stay with me and I stay with you." Once they arrived at the apartment, Logan realized he needed to make some adjustments. The home, designed for a childless bachelor, lacked anything a kid would find welcoming or fun. "Ellie," he called as he prepared a sandwich for lunch, "what do you think about going shopping later? We can buy some things for your spot on the couch, and maybe some toys." Her face lit up. "Real toys?" "Real toys, what would you like?" She thought for a moment as though it were a very complex question. "A doll? With hair you can brush? And—" She hesitated, unsure if she could ask for more. "Maybe some colored pencils. Lots of them, in all the colors." "That sounds great," Logan agreed, setting a plate in front of her. "We'll buy all that and more, whatever you want." While Ellie ate, Logan watched her with a mix of admiration and concern. In less than 24 hours, she'd gone from a frightened child scrubbing windshields in the rain to someone who was starting timidly to express wants and preferences. It was a subtle but significant transformation, and he was changing too. The Logan from 2 days ago could never have imagined buying dolls and colored pencils or fighting for custody of a child he barely knew. Never would he have considered turning his immaculate apartment into a child-friendly space. But here he was, already planning where to put a little desk for her to draw, what kind of bed to buy when the sofa no longer sufficed, which schools in the area might be best. "All done," Ellie announced, showing him her empty plate. "Great," said Logan, returning to the present. "Let's get ready to go. We also need to stop by a doctor, as Rachel suggested." Ellie frowned. "I don't like doctors, they hurt my mum." Logan felt his heart clench. "This is a different kind of doctor," he said gently. "He just wants to make sure you're okay. It won't hurt, I promise." She didn't look entirely convinced, but nodded anyway. "And after that, we'll get your doll." "And after that, we'll get your doll," he confirmed. Logan realized he was smiling again, something he had done more in the last 24 hours than in the entire past few months. A genuine smile, not the professional grin he wore in business meetings. As he helped Ellie tie her new shoes, he felt a surge of emotion, both responsibility and affection. He was starting to care deeply about this little person who had entered his life so unexpectedly. And that scared him more than any legal battle he faced. The rain had returned to Boston that morning. Roy Baker staggered down the grimy hallway of his building until he reached his apartment door. The day had been unproductive odd jobs here and there, nothing you could call real work. He fumbled for his keys in the pockets of his worn jacket, dropping them twice before finally opening the door. The apartment seemed even emptier and messier without Ellie. Not that he missed the girl, she was just a problem, a constant reminder of Sarah and the promises he never intended to keep. But the kid had her uses. She did basic chores and, more importantly, brought in extra money from cleaning windshields or begging in the streets. Roy flopped onto his torn couch, cracking open a warm beer. 3 days had passed since that suited stranger took Ellie away. At first, Roy felt relieved, one less mouth to feed, but now he was beginning to miss the extra cash. His gaze fell on some old magazines scattered on the floor. He flipped through them idly, more out of boredom than interest, until a photo caught his eye. It was a business magazine from a few months back that Sarah used to subscribe to. On the cover, a man in a dark suit with a stern expression stared directly at the camera. The headline read, "The 40 Most Influential Attorneys, Under 40, Logan Carter Revolutionizes Mergers and Acquisitions." Roy choked on his beer. The man in the suit, the man who took Ellie, was him, no doubt. That face was unforgettable, rigid, determined, eyes that seemed to see through people. Logan Carter, a lawyer, a rich one apparently. A crooked smile appeared on Roy's face. Maybe the situation wasn't so bad after all. Maybe there was an opportunity here. a wealthy attorney who, for some reason, decided to take a child who wasn't his. That didn't sound very legal. There might be money in it for him. Roy grabbed his phone and did a quick search. Logan Carter really was a big dealer partner in a major law firm, specializing in corporate law, a respected name in the city's legal community. Worth millions. Roy's grin widened. Finishing his beer in one gulp, he grabbed his coat. There was a police station a few blocks away. Time to pay a visit. The 12th District Police Station wasn't the friendliest place in the world, but it served its purpose. Roy approached the front desk, forcing himself to appear more sober than he was. "I need to file a complaint," he told the officer on duty, a middle-aged woman with a bored expression. "What kind of complaint, sir?" Roy cleared his throat, mentally rehearsing his story. "My stepdaughter was taken by a man without my permission. I want to report a kidnapping." The word kidnapping had the desired effect. The officer immediately became more alert and called over a detective who was standing nearby. Roy was led into a small room, where he began spinning his tale. He claimed he was Ellie's legal guardian since the death of her mother. Said that 3 days ago, a man named Logan Carter showed up at his home and, taking advantage of a moment when Roy had supposedly gone out to buy groceries, took the girl. "It took you 3 days to report your stepdaughter missing?" questioned the detective, a tall man with graying hair and a suspicious stare. Roy was ready for that question. "I thought she'd gone to visit a friend from school. Only when I went to pick her up and found out she wasn't there did I start worrying. I asked neighbors, and one of them said he saw my girl leaving with a man in a suit. Only today did I manage to find out who he was." The detective took notes, still looking skeptical. "And how did you discover this man's identity?" "I saw his photo in a magazine. Recognized him right away. It's Logan Carter, a famous lawyer." "What reason would he have to take your stepdaughter?" Roy shrugged, attempting to appear both confused and outraged. "I don't know, maybe. Maybe he's one of those perverts, you know, the ones who look respectable but have dark secrets." The detective raised an eyebrow, clearly doubting such a serious accusation against a respected citizen. "Mr. Baker, that's a serious allegation. Do you have any proof?" "I have witnesses who saw him take my girl, and I have documents proving I'm her legal guardian." That was a lie. Roy had never formalized his relationship with Ellie, but he hoped the police wouldn't check on that right away. After more questions, the detective left the room, leaving Roy waiting. 15 minutes later, he returned with another officer. "Mr. Baker, we'll file your complaint and investigate. If what you're saying is true, we'll take the necessary steps to get your stepdaughter back." Roy nodded, trying to appear like a concerned guardian. Inside, he was calculating how much he could squeeze out of that wealthy lawyer to keep quiet. Logan's apartment now looked different. Small signs of Ellie's presence were everywhere. Colorful drawings stuck to the fridge, a doll perched on the sofa, pencils and papers spread out on the coffee table. In just 4 days, the once impersonal space had come to life. Ellie was on the living room rug, drawing intensely with her new colored pencils, one of her favorite gifts since Logan took her shopping. Her now clean, well-cared-for hair fell over her shoulders as she bent over her paper. Logan watched her from the kitchen as he prepared dinner, something he never used to do, preferring takeout. Now, however, he found a strange satisfaction in cooking for Ellie, in seeing her try new flavors, in chatting about her day as they ate together. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Rachel. "Logan, we have a problem," she said without preamble. "Roy filed a police report against you." Logan felt his blood go cold. "When?" "This afternoon. He's accusing you of kidnapping." "Damn," Logan muttered, stepping away so Ellie wouldn't hear. "He didn't seem to care at all when we left." "Well, now he's playing the concerned guardian. The police are already looking into it. I heard it from a contact at the station." "So now what?" "We'll have to speed things up. We already have the medical report documenting Ellie's bruises, and the psychologist has a preliminary assessment. I'm filing for the emergency custody order tonight. But be prepared, Logan. It's likely you'll get a visit from the police in the next few hours." After hanging up, Logan looked at Ellie, so absorbed in her drawing, so unaware of the legal storm gathering around her. The fear of losing her, of seeing her forced back into that toxic environment, was almost paralyzing. He didn't have much time to prepare. Less than an hour later, the doorbell rang. Logan took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. Through the window, he saw two uniformed officers waiting. "Ellie," he called gently. "Some police officers are here to talk to me. Don't be scared, okay? It's just a conversation." The girl immediately dropped her pencil, her eyes wide with fear. "They're taking me back to Roy." "No," Logan promised, striving to sound more confident than he felt. "They just want to ask some questions. I'll be right here with you." He opened the door, keeping his expression serene despite his racing heart. "Mr. Logan Carter?" asked the older officer. "Yes, that's me. Detective Rodriguez and Officer Thompson. We'd like to speak with you about a complaint we received." Logan nodded, inviting them in. "I'm aware of the situation. Please come in." The officers stepped in, immediately noticing Ellie, who shrank against the sofa, clutching her doll. "Is that Ellie Baker?" asked the detective, discreetly pointing toward the girl. "Ellie Simmons," Logan corrected. "Baker is the stepdad's last name, not hers." The detective made a note. "Mr. Carter, we have a report stating you removed the minor Ellie from her legal guardian, Roy Baker, without authorization." "I understand," Logan replied calmly. "But there's more to the story than that. Roy Baker is not Ellie's legal guardian. He was simply her mother, Sarah's boyfriend. Sarah passed away recently. There's no official documentation giving him any rights over Ellie." The detective looked slightly surprised. "Mr. Baker claims he's the legal guardian." "He lied," Logan said simply. "I can prove it. My attorney, Rachel Monroe, is preparing the necessary paperwork. But more importantly, Ellie's well-being is at stake. I found her in the rain, alone, at 5 years old. When I took her home, I saw the conditions she was living in. She has bruises all over her body. She doesn't go to school. She was forced to beg on the streets." As he spoke, Logan noticed the younger officer's gaze kept drifting to Ellie, concern evident on his face. "We have a medical report documenting signs of neglect and possible abuse," Logan continued, "and a preliminary report from a child psychologist. I'm acting to protect this child, not break the law." The detective sighed. "Still, Mr. Carter, the proper procedure would have been to call Child Protective Services, not take matters into your own hands." "I know, and that was my mistake. But it was a decision made in the moment, seeing a child in danger." The doorbell rang again. Logan opened it, relieved to see Rachel. "Detective Rodriguez," she greeted, surprising Logan with the familiarity. "I thought I might find you here. I'm Rachel Monroe, Mr. Carter's attorney." She stepped inside, carrying a folder. "I have documentation here proving Roy Baker has no legal right to Ellie, and I also have the medical and psychological reports indicating she was at risk." The detective reviewed the documents for several long minutes, tension thick in the air. Ellie remained curled on the sofa, eyes darting between the adults. "Even with all this," the detective finally said, "we still have an irregular situation. You can't simply take a child, even with good intentions." "We're aware," Rachel interjected. "That's why we've already filed for emergency temporary custody. We just need a few days until the hearing." "Nevertheless," the detective insisted, "we'll need a formal statement from you, Mr. Carter. You'll have to come down to the station with us." Logan nodded, resigned. He had expected this possibility. "What about Ellie?" he asked, worried. "Her social worker is on the way. She'll speak with the girl and determine the best temporary course of action." At that moment, Ellie got up from the sofa and ran to Logan, clinging to his leg. "I don't want to go," she said, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "Please don't let them take me back." Logan knelt down eye level with her. "No one's taking you back to Roy, Ellie, I promise. These officers are just doing their job, making sure you're safe." "But I am safe with you," she insisted, voice breaking into sobs. The detective and officer exchanged looks, clearly moved by the scene. "Here's what we can do," the detective said, softening his tone. "For now, the girl can stay here with the attorney while Mr. Carter comes with us to give a statement. The social worker will assess the situation when she arrives." Logan nodded, grateful for the small concession. He explained to Ellie that he had to leave for a few hours, but Rachel would stay, and he'd be back soon. "Promise?" Ellie asked between sobs. "I promise," Logan said, giving her a brief hug before standing. While Logan got ready to leave, Rachel organized documents for the social worker who was due to arrive. The atmosphere was tense but controlled. The doorbell rang a third time that evening. It was the social worker, a middle-aged woman with a stern but kind expression. "Ms. Patel," she introduced herself. "I'm here to evaluate the situation of the minor Ellie Simmons." After a brief conversation with Rachel, the social worker asked to speak with Ellie alone. Logan hesitated, but Rachel indicated cooperation was best. Before leaving with the officers, he said a final goodbye to Ellie, giving her a reassuring smile. "Everything will be fine," he whispered. At the station, Logan answered questions with patience and honesty. He described in detail how he found Ellie, his visit to Roy's apartment, and the impulsive decision to take her away. "I know I didn't follow the proper procedures," he admitted, "but at the time all I could think about was her safety." The interview lasted nearly 2 hours. By the end, Logan felt emotionally drained yet determined. Exiting the interrogation room, he found Rachel in the hallway. "How did it go?" she asked. "As well as it could, I think. What about Ellie?" The social worker just finished interviewing her. "Logan, you won't believe what happened." Before Rachel could elaborate, Ms. Patel approached them, accompanied by Ellie, who immediately ran to Logan, wrapping her arms around his legs. "Mr. Carter," the social worker began, "I had a long talk with Ellie. She's a very bright, articulate girl for her age." Logan nodded, placing a protective hand on Ellie's shoulder. "Usually in situations like this, the child would be placed in foster care temporarily, while the custody issue is resolved," Ms. Patel continued. "However, given the circumstances and the clear bond between you two, I'm recommending that Ellie remain in your care until the hearing." Logan could hardly believe his ears. "Thank you," he said, sincere. "What made you decide that?" The social worker smiled gently at Ellie. "Something she said during our conversation. When I asked what happened on the day you took her, she answered quite sincerely, 'I asked him to take me.' Then she explained how you treat her well, how she finally has real meals, how she's no longer scared. In all my years of service, I've rarely seen a child advocate for an adult so convincingly." Logan looked at Ellie, both surprised and deeply moved. She smiled at him, a confident smile that contrasted sharply with the frightened child he'd found in the rain just 4 days prior. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now we prepare for the hearing," Rachel responded. "With Ms. Patel's favorable report, our chances have just improved significantly." As they left the station, night had fully fallen. Ellie, exhausted by the emotionally charged day, fell asleep in the car almost immediately. "She really said that?" Logan asked Rachel as he drove. "I asked him to take me?" Rachel smiled. "She did. And a lot more. She talked for almost an hour, telling them all about Roy, how you rescued her, how safe she feels now." Logan glanced in the rearview mirror at Ellie, asleep in the back seat, a feeling of protection and affection flooding his chest. The battle was far from over. Roy wouldn't give up easily, especially now that he knew who Logan was. There would be more interrogations, hearings, uncertainties. But in that moment, driving through the quiet city with Ellie safe in the back seat, Logan felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. And for the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future where he and Ellie would be a real family. Rachel's office looked like a command center. Documents piled high, sticky notes of various colors marking important pages, and 3 computers displaying different databases. Logan and Rachel had been working for 3 days straight, piecing together every scrap of information that could help their case. "Look at this," Rachel said, sliding a folder toward Logan. "I got the mother's medical records. Sarah Simmons died 6 months ago from advanced pancreatic cancer." Logan opened the folder, scanning hospitalization dates, attempted treatments, the doctor's notes on her gradual decline. The final page contained something that made his stomach drop. A statement signed by Sarah, dated 2 weeks before her death, expressing her wish for Ellie to stay in Roy Baker's care. "This complicates things," he muttered. Rachel leaned over to read the document. "Yes and no, it's a simple statement, not a legally recognized guardianship document. And it was made under extreme circumstances, She was in the hospital, likely on pain medication, with no legal counsel. But it still expresses her will. The will of a dying mother who believed Roy would take good care of her daughter, Rachel clarified. Legally, what matters now is that he didn't fulfill that responsibility. Logan nodded, flipping through the pages to find more records. No father in the picture. No mention in any of the records. Ellie's birth certificate says father unknown. That at least simplified one aspect. There was no other adult with parental rights to contest their petition for custody. What about Roy? Logan asked. What do we have on him? Rachel grabbed another, thicker folder. This is what my investigator found. Roy Baker, 46. History of unstable employment, mostly in construction. 3 drunk and disorderly arrests in the past 2 years. 1 assault charge that was dropped. Victim refused to press charges, probably out of fear. Nothing specifically involving children? No, but that doesn't weaken our position. His pattern of unstable behavior, alcoholism, inability to keep a job, all of it builds our argument that he's not fit to raise a child. Logan thumbed through the documents. Police station mugshots, employment records that rarely lasted more than a few months. A portrait of a drifting man dragging everyone around him into his chaos. And Ellie's medical reports. Rachel pushed a 3rd folder his way. Dr. Martinez was thorough. She documented every bruise, noted signs of mild malnutrition, and found that Ellie's vaccinations weren't updated in the last year. All of that since her mother died, Logan said, feeling that familiar anger rise. Exactly. We have a clear before and after picture. When Sarah was alive, Ellie attended school, had regular medical checkups, was well nourished. In 6 months under Roy's sole care, all of that deteriorated rapidly. Logan closed the folder, unable to keep looking at the clinical photos of Ellie's injuries. What about the psychological report? It's our strongest piece. Rachel pulled out a neatly bound report from her drawer. Dr. Patel was very direct. Ellie shows signs of post-traumatic stress related to her mother's loss, compounded by subsequent neglect. She repeatedly mentions being afraid of Roy, especially when he drinks. She was often left alone for long stretches of time, including overnight, and frequently went to bed hungry. Logan felt the weight of those words. Imagining Ellie alone in that situation, with no one to protect her, made his heart ache. Dr. Patel also noted, Rachel continued, a marked improvement in Ellie's behavior and emotional state since she's been with you. She's more communicative, smiles more, shows fewer signs of anxiety. That strongly supports our case. What's our timeline? The preliminary hearing is in 3 days. If all goes well, we'll secure temporary custody for 6 months, enough time to build the case for permanent custody. Logan nodded, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of exhaustion. He'd slept little these past days, balancing work with Rachel and caring for Ellie. Oddly enough, he didn't miss his old, orderly, solitary routine. Logan, Rachel said, shutting the folders, it's going to work out. We have a strong case. Roy has no resources for a good lawyer, and even if he did, the facts are against him. I hope you're right. I am, she smiled confidently. Now go home, Ellie's probably waiting. He checked his watch. Almost 6 in the evening. The babysitter Rachel had recommended had been with Ellie since morning. Another adjustment to his life he wouldn't have imagined making just weeks ago. Thank you, Rachel, for everything. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we win. Returning home, Logan found Ellie and Mrs. Chen, the babysitter, painting at the kitchen table. The scene was so domestic, so different from the lonely order he used to come home to, that for a moment he just stood in the doorway, silently observing. Mr. Carter, Mrs. Chen greeted him when she noticed him. Welcome back, we've had a productive day. Ellie lifted her head, a huge smile lighting up her face when she saw him. Logan, look what I made. She held up a colorful painting, 3 people, holding hands under a blue sky. Logan instantly recognized himself on the right in a typical suit, Ellie in the middle wearing a pink dress, and on the left a female figure with a golden halo over her head. That's my mom, Ellie explained, pointing to the haloed figure. She's watching us from heaven. Logan felt a tightness in his chest. It's a beautiful picture, Ellie. Mrs. Chen smiled, starting to clean up the paints. She has a natural talent for art. You should consider classes. That's a good idea, Logan agreed, placing the drawing on the fridge alongside several others Ellie had made over the past few days. How was the rest of your day? Great. We had breakfast, went to the park, practiced reading, had lunch, did some simple math, then art. She's a wonderful student. Logan paid Mrs. Chen and walked her to the door. When he returned, Ellie was taking plates out of a low cabinet. What are you doing? Getting ready for dinner, she answered seriously. Mrs. Chen said you'd be bringing food. Logan grinned. I did. I ordered Chinese. It should be here any minute. I love chow mein. I know, that's why I ordered it. As they waited for the food, Logan helped Ellie finish setting the table. It was a simple ritual they'd developed in the last few days, placing plates, silverware, napkins. Ellie insisted on helping, proud of contributing to the domestic routine. When the food arrived, they sat to eat, and Ellie excitedly recounted her day at the park, the ducks she saw, the letters she was learning. Logan listened, asked questions, and laughed at her uniquely childlike, perceptive comments. At some point, while watching Ellie struggle to pick up a piece of chicken with chopsticks, a losing battle that eventually ended with her using a fork, Logan realized something astonishing. He was happy, genuinely happy, in a way he hadn't been in years, maybe decades. After dinner and their nightly reading session, something that had become part of their routine, Logan put Ellie to bed. In the first days, she still slept on the couch, but it soon became clear she needed her own space. Logan quickly converted the guest room, once a makeshift office, into Ellie's bedroom. The walls were still beige, but he'd promised they'd paint them together in whatever color she chose. Logan, Ellie called as he was about to leave the room after a goodnight kiss. Yes? Do I ever have to go back to Roy? The question caught him off guard, though he knew it was always on her mind. No, Ellie. We're doing everything we can so you'll never have to. Promise? Logan sat on the edge of her bed. Remember when we first met? What did I promise you? That you wouldn't send me back. Exactly, and I always keep my promises. She smiled, apparently reassured, and closed her eyes. Logan stayed a few minutes longer watching her drift off, amazed at how children can trust so openly, even after so many disappointments. Back in the living room, he poured himself a glass of wine and sat on the couch, case documents spread on the coffee table. He should review everything again to prepare for the hearing, but his thoughts were elsewhere. For the first time in many years, he thought about his own childhood distant parents, always busy with their careers. The constant feeling of being an inconvenience, a secondary project. There was never physical neglect. He always had the best money could buy. But the emotional void, oh, that he knew well. Maybe that was why he'd never formed a family, why he avoided deep relationships. He had convinced himself that he was better off alone, that solitude was a conscious choice, not a rooted fear. Now suddenly there was Ellie, a child who burst into his orderly, solitary life, turning it upside down, and instead of resenting the disorder, he embraced it. The drawings on the fridge, the children's books on the coffee table, the small purple toothbrush next to his in the bathroom, all these signs of another human presence in his space now brought him comfort rather than anxiety. Was this what family meant? Not the solemn duty his parents seemed to feel, but this simple joy in someone else's company, this constant concern for another person's well-being, this desire to protect, to nurture, to just be there. Logan picked up the drawing Ellie had made, now in his hands after he'd taken it down from the fridge. 3 figures holding hands, an improvised family, born of chance and courage, born of rain and despair, of 2 souls recognizing they needed each other. Tomorrow there would be more documents to review, more strategies to discuss with Rachel, more preparation for the hearing. The legal battle was only beginning. Roy might come up with new tactics, new arguments. The system could throw unexpected obstacles in their path. But that night, sitting alone in the quiet living room, hearing Ellie's soft breathing from the bedroom, Logan felt a certainty that transcended all the legal questions. They were already a family. The papers, the documents, the court decisions, those would only formalize what was already in their hearts. For the first time, the word family no longer frightened him. On the contrary, It felt like the answer to a question he hadn't known he was asking his entire life. The Family Assistance Center was a modern building with pastel walls and furniture designed to be calming. Logan held Ellie's hand while they waited in the lobby. Today was the official family assessment, a crucial step in the custody process. Rachel had explained it was standard procedure. Ellie would be interviewed by a specialized psychologist, and Logan would undergo an evaluation with social workers to determine his fitness as a guardian. "Are you nervous?" he asked, noticing Ellie swinging her legs anxiously from a chair too big for her. She nodded. "A little. What will they ask me?" "Just about how you feel, what it's been like living with me. There's nothing to be afraid of, just tell the truth." Ellie squeezed his hand a bit tighter. "What if they don't believe me?" "They will. Grown-ups can usually tell when kids are being honest." A door opened, and a middle-aged woman with a tablet appeared. "Ellie Simmons, I'm Dr. Foster. Would you come with me?" Ellie looked at Logan, seeking reassurance. He smiled encouragingly. "It'll be quick," he promised. "I'll be right here when you're done." Reluctantly, Ellie let go of his hand and followed the psychologist into another room. Logan checked his watch. Rachel should arrive any minute with more documents they needed for the assessment. 15 minutes later, Rachel walked into the waiting area, cheeks flushed as if she'd been running. "Sorry I'm late," she said, sitting beside Logan, "but I have important news." "Good or bad?" "Both. First the good. I found Sarah Simmons's death certificate and, more importantly, her complete birth records for Ellie. Roy Baker doesn't appear on any official document as the girl's guardian. There's no record of a marriage to Sarah, no paternity forms, no will naming him as guardian." Logan felt a weight lift off his shoulders. That completely weakens his position. "Exactly. Now the less good news, Roy is here." "What? How did he find out about this assessment?" "Family court hearings are public, Logan, and custody proceedings are on record. Anyone, especially someone involved in the case, can get that information." The reception door opened as if on cue, and Roy Baker walked in, initially unrecognizable. He had cut his hair, shaved, and wore a clean dress shirt, a far cry from the disheveled appearance he had when Logan met him. "This isn't good," Rachel muttered. "He's trying to look respectable." Logan felt anger surging at the sight of the man who had mistreated Ellie, now attempting to pose as a responsible citizen. Roy noticed them and smiled, a calculated grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Carter," he greeted with false cordiality. "Miss Monroe." "What are you doing here, Roy?" Logan asked, trying to keep his voice low and controlled. "Same as you, I suppose. I'm here for my girl." "She's not your girl," Logan retorted, fists clenching. "In the eyes of the law, maybe not officially," Roy conceded with a shrug. "But I was with Sarah for years. Ellie knows me as her stepdad. I have moral rights, if not legal ones." Rachel intervened before Logan could reply. "Mr. Baker, I suggest we avoid confrontation. This won't help anyone's case." Roy nodded, overly polite. "I only want what's best for Ellie." Before the conversation could continue, a social worker called Logan for his evaluation. Rachel gave him a look indicating she'd handle Roy while he was gone. The evaluation lasted almost an hour. Questions about his routine, work, how he planned to balance his career with caring for a child. Logan answered honestly, describing the changes he'd already made: the reliable babysitter, adjustments to his schedule, prioritizing Ellie's needs. When he returned to the waiting area, he found Rachel alone going through papers with a focused expression. "Where's Roy?" he asked, looking around. "He got called for an evaluation too," she said without looking up. "Even though he has no formal legal rights, the court wants a complete picture of everyone involved." "And Ellie?" "Still with the psychologist. Those evaluations can be lengthy." Logan sat down, bracing himself for more waiting. After a few minutes, Rachel closed her folder. "Logan, there's something you should know. Roy approached me while you were being evaluated." "What did he want?" "He offered a deal." Rachel adjusted her glasses, clearly uncomfortable. "He said he'd drop any claim to Ellie for money." Logan's stomach turned. "He's trying to sell her custody." "Essentially, yes. He suggested a financial compensation to help him start over." "That's disgusting," Logan growled, contempt evident in his voice. "How much did he ask for?" $100,000. Logan let out a humorless laugh. At least now we know for certain he never cared about Ellie. He just wants to profit. That can be used against him, Rachel observed. If he makes that offer again in front of official witnesses, it'll be almost a confession that he has no real interest in her well-being. The hallway doors opened, and Ellie emerged with Dr. Foster. Seeing Logan, her face brightened and she ran to him. "How was it?" he asked, kneeling to her level. "It was good. I drew our house." Ellie smiled, then hesitated as if recalling something important. "Can I tell you a secret?" "Sure." She leaned closer, whispering in his ear. "I told her I want to stay with you forever." Logan felt a lump in his throat. "That's a great secret," he managed to say. Dr. Foster approached, smiling kindly. "Ellie did very well. You can wait here. We'll call everyone back for a joint discussion soon." She had barely finished speaking when the reception door opened again. Roy came back from his evaluation, walking with the confidence of someone who thinks he made a good impression. Ellie saw him. Her entire body froze, eyes going wide with terror. Then came a scream, high-pitched, visceral, loaded with pure fear. "He's going to take me. Don't let him take me." She clung to Logan with such force that her small nails dug into his skin through his shirt. Her body shook violently, tears streaming down her face. "I don't want to go back. Please, please." Her reaction was so intense, so genuinely terrified that everyone in the room stopped. The receptionist stood up, alarmed. Dr. Foster rushed over, and another social worker appeared in the hallway, drawn by the noise. Logan wrapped his arms around Ellie protectively, whispering words of comfort. "Shh, it's okay. You're not going back. I promised, remember?" But Ellie was beyond rational consolation, trapped in a primal panic triggered by Roy's mere presence. She kept screaming, clinging to Logan like her life depended on it. Dr. Foster moved quickly, instructing Logan to take Ellie to a private room at the end of the hallway, away from Roy's sight. Rachel followed, while another social worker blocked Roy, who looked genuinely surprised by the intensity of Ellie's reaction. In the private room, it took nearly 20 minutes for Ellie to calm down enough to stop crying. Even then, she refused to let go of Logan's hand. Dr. Foster watched closely, occasionally making notes on her tablet. "Ellie," she finally said, her voice calm and professional, "can you tell me why you were so scared when you saw Roy?" Ellie looked at Logan, who nodded encouragingly. "It's okay, you can tell her." He's mean," Ellie said softly. "When he drinks, he gets really mad. He breaks things one time." She hesitated, as though recalling something especially painful. "One time, he pushed me so hard, I fell and hurt myself here." She pointed to a small, nearly invisible scar on her forehead. Dr. Foster exchanged a meaningful look with the social worker who had joined them. This spontaneous reaction, this visceral fear, was more telling than hours of rehearsed statements could ever be. "Thank you for telling us, Ellie," said the doctor. "You were very brave." Rachel, who had stepped out briefly to make some calls, returned with important news. "I just got a very interesting phone call," she announced, barely containing her excitement. "A woman named Martha Geller reached out to my office. She was a neighbor of Ellie and Sarah for years, until she recently moved away. She said she was always worried about the girl after her mother died, and when she heard about the case from someone who works at the court, she decided to come forward." "What did she say?" Logan asked. "That she often heard Roy shouting at Ellie, that more than once she found the girl locked out in the hallway when Roy wouldn't let her in, that she took care of Ellie for days at a time when Roy disappeared on drinking binges, and the best part, she has records photos she took discreetly, dates noted, even audio recordings of the shouting through the wall. It was as though the universe had aligned in their favor." Dr. Foster and the social worker exchanged glances again, and Logan could sense the scales of justice tipping decisively on their side. The final meeting of the day took place in a conference room. On one side of the table sat Logan, Rachel, and Dr. Foster. On the other side were Roy and a public defender assigned to him, clearly overwhelmed and unprepared. In the center sat the family court judge, the Honorable Judge Martinez, reviewing the hastily updated reports from the day's events. "Well," she finally said, setting the papers aside, "I believe we have a fairly clear picture of the situation. Mr. Baker, you have no legal rights to Ellie Simmons. There are no documents establishing you as her guardian, nor any biological or adoptive relationship. Roy tried to protest, but his lawyer silenced him with a glare. Additionally, the judge continued, there is substantial evidence of neglect and possible abuse. The child's terror upon seeing you today is especially concerning, as are the statements of Ms. Geller, which have been preliminarily verified. She turned to Logan. Mr. Carter, though your initial actions were technically illegal, removing a child without proper authorization, the exceptional circumstances and your subsequent conduct indicate genuinely protective intentions. The reports from professionals show that Ellie is thriving under your care. The judge adjusted her glasses, adopting a more formal tone. Based on all the reports and evidence presented, I am granting temporary custody of Ellie Simmons to Mr. Logan Carter, effective immediately for a period of 6 months. During this time, Mr. Carter, you must comply with all follow-up visits from social services and complete a foster parent course. She looked straight at Roy. Mr. Baker, you are prohibited from making any attempt to contact Ellie Simmons. Any violation will result in severe legal consequences. Additionally, I strongly advise you to seek help for your alcohol problem. Roy stood abruptly, his face red with rage. This is ridiculous. She was my responsibility. Sit down, Mr. Baker, the judge ordered, her voice firm. Your conduct only confirms the concerns raised in these reports. Continue, and I'll have you escorted out. Reluctantly, Roy sat back down, muttering curses under his breath. A hearing to evaluate permanent custody will be scheduled for 6 months from now, the judge concluded. Court is adjourned. Leaving the center while they waited for the car in the parking lot, Logan knelt beside Ellie, who looked exhausted after the emotionally draining day. You heard the judge, right? You're staying with me. No one's taking you back. Ellie nodded, still trembling slightly from the confrontation. Then, surprisingly, she threw her arms around Logan's neck, hugging him tight. Thank you for fighting for me, she whispered in his ear. No one ever did that before. Something broke inside Logan, perhaps the last barrier or the wall he'd built around his emotions. He felt tears burn his eyes, tears he hadn't shed since childhood. He didn't try to hold them back, letting them fall freely as he hugged the small person who, in so little time, had become the center of his world. I'll always fight for you, Ellie, he promised, voice shaking. Always. Rachel watched from a few steps away, discreetly wiping her own eyes. When she finally approached, her smile was warm and genuine. Congratulations to you both, she said. The battle isn't completely over, but we took a huge step today. Logan stood, still holding Ellie's hand. He was momentarily speechless, overwhelmed by emotion. Finally, he found words. Thank you, Rachel. I'm not just saving her life, she's saving mine. The sun was setting in the Boston sky, painting the horizon with shades of orange and pink. A new phase was beginning. For Ellie, for Logan, for this improbable family formed by chance and sealed by choice. There would be more challenges ahead, no doubt. But in that moment, walking to the car hand in hand, nothing mattered more than being together. And for now, that was more than enough. The family court was especially crowded. Logan adjusted his tie nervously as Ellie, seated beside him, swung her legs that didn't reach the floor. Her navy blue dress had been chosen especially for the occasion, and a silver star tiara adorned her carefully combed hair. 6 months had passed since the provisional custody was granted. Months of social worker visits, foster parent courses that Logan attended diligently, reports and evaluations. But they'd also been months of bedtime stories, refrigerator drawings, and small daily triumphs that completely transformed their lives. Nervous? Rachel asked, sitting next to them. Shouldn't I be? Logan answered. All the reports are positive. Ellie's doing well in school, but still, it's normal, Rachel assured him. This is probably the most important decision you've ever waited for. Ellie glanced up at him with surprising confidence for her newly turned 6 years. Everything's going to work out, Logan. The judge is going to say yes. I asked. The stars last night. The bailiff announced Judge Martinez's entrance and everyone stood. After the formalities, the judge began reviewing the case. We're here for the final hearing on the permanent custody of Ellie Simmons, she declared. Over the last 6 months, We've closely monitored the temporary arrangement granted to Mr. Logan Carter. She flipped through the documents before continuing. I have all the reports here, and I must say it's rare to see evaluations so consistently positive. Logan kept his attention on the judge as she cited findings. The social worker notes, and I quote, "The transformation in Ellie's well-being is remarkable. She shows confidence and a healthy bond with her guardian. Mr. Carter has completely reorganized his life to prioritize the child's needs." The judge looked up over her glasses. One thing stands out in all these reports: the word family. Not a family in the traditional sense, perhaps, but a unit formed by choice, commitment, and most importantly, genuine love. She paused, looking directly at Ellie. "Ellie, do you want Mr. Carter to be your permanent guardian?" Ellie stood up immediately. "I want him to be my dad," she said clearly, "not just my guardian." A murmur spread through the room. The judge smiled and turned to Logan. "Mr. Carter, are you aware of the permanent responsibilities this custody entails?" Logan rose to his feet. "I'm fully aware, Your Honor, and there's nothing I want more." The judge nodded, satisfied. "This court hereby grants permanent custody of Ellie Simmons to Mr. Logan Carter, with all the legal rights and responsibilities therein." She banged the gavel, its echo reverberating in the courtroom. "I should add that Mr. Roy Baker is permanently prohibited from any contact with the minor." Ellie looked up at Logan, her eyes shining. "Is it over? Are you my permanent guardian now?" "Yes," he replied, his voice catching. "No one can separate us now." Without warning, Ellie jumped off her chair and into Logan's arms. "We won!" she exclaimed, drawing smiles from everyone around. "Yes, we won," Logan agreed, hugging her tightly, not caring about the tears escaping his eyes. The drive home was initially quiet, both of them absorbing this profound change in their lives. "Logan," Ellie finally said, breaking the silence. "Yes? What should I call you now?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" "Well, you're not just Logan anymore. You're my permanent guardian." She pronounced each syllable carefully. "You can call me whatever you feel comfortable with," he replied. "Logan is still fine. Or could I call you Dad someday?" she finished, looking out the window as though it were a casual question. Logan felt a lump in his throat. "That would be the greatest honor of my life," Ellie smiled. "Okay, I'll think about it." When they got home, they found a surprise. On the door was a colorful sign made by Mrs. Chen. "Congratulations, Logan and Ellie." Inside there was a cake with the same words written in bright icing, a small gesture that made Ellie jump for joy. "Can we eat it now?" she asked, running to the kitchen. Logan laughed. "It's a special day, so I think we can have dessert first." That night, Ellie fell asleep quickly, exhausted by the intense day. Logan lingered in her room, just watching her sleep, overwhelmed by the idea that now, officially, she was his family. The next morning, Logan woke to the sound of clanging pans in the kitchen. Alarmed, he rushed out of bed to see what was happening. He found Ellie standing on a stool, stirring a large mixing bowl, flour everywhere. "Ellie, what are you doing?" She turned, beaming, her face streaked with flour. "I'm making pancakes to celebrate, but I think I put in too much flour." Logan surveyed the kitchen, now a white battleground, and instead of annoyance, he felt only amusement. "I think we need more milk to balance it out," he said, grabbing an apron. Together, they fixed the batter and started cooking. Some pancakes fell on the floor, others turned out misshapen, but a few came out almost perfect. "Look, this one looks like a heart," Ellie exclaimed, pointing at a slightly deformed pancake. "You're right," Logan agreed. "It's the best one." As they ate, generously drenched in maple syrup, Ellie looked at Logan seriously. "Now that I'm yours forever, can I learn to read properly? Like the big kids in my class?" "Of course you can," Logan replied. "You're already making progress in school, right?" She scrunched her nose. "Yes, but I want to read real books, big books, without pictures." Logan smiled. "We'll work on it together, a little bit every day." After breakfast, as they cleaned the mess, Logan had an idea. "How about we make a chore chart, with time for reading, for drawing?" Ellie's eyes lit up. "Can I decorate it?" "Of course, it's your chart." An hour later, they'd improvised a corkboard, with Ellie decorating each section with stars and hearts while Logan helped schedule a routine. "I think we need more books," he said when they finished. "How about a trip to the bookstore this afternoon?" She nodded enthusiastically. After lunch, they headed to the bookstore, Ellie holding his hand firmly the whole way. In the children's section, Logan watched her carefully examine covers, flip through pages reverently. They left with a bag full of books, for Ellie to practice, others for Logan to read to her, and an illustrated dictionary she insisted was essential for someone who wants to learn everything. Back at the apartment, they curled up on the sofa to explore their treasures. Logan suggested starting with The Giving Tree. "Read it with me," Ellie said, settling beside him. Logan began, reading slowly, pointing to each word. In some parts, Ellie kept up, recognizing words she already knew. In others, she listened intently, absorbing the sounds and meanings. As the story progressed, a tale of unconditional giving, Logan realized he was just as captivated as Ellie. Perhaps because in some way it mirrored his own journey. Discovering that opening space in your life for another person brings profound enrichment you never thought possible. When they finished, Ellie stayed still, resting her head on Logan's shoulder. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "You're my safe place." 4 simple words that hit Logan with the force of a revelation. He closed his eyes for a moment, receiving the statement as a rare, everlasting gift, a gift that came with the responsibility of being for this small person what he himself had never had. A constant, reliable, safe presence. "And you're mine," he finally replied. The next morning, as they prepared breakfast together, now a cherished routine, Ellie helped set the table while Logan cut fruit. Suddenly she stopped and looked at Logan with a serious expression. "Logan," she began, sitting at the table, "you saved me. You know, you're my real hero." He stopped what he was doing, moved by her sincerity. He sat across from her, taking her small hands in his. "Ellie," he said, eyes brimming, "you saved me too." And it was true. Before her, his life had been a string of predictable, safe days, but also hollow. She had brought chaos, yes. Toys, scattered around, paint stains on the towels, but also laughter echoing through once silent walls, spontaneous hugs that stripped away every defense, a reason to come home that went beyond mere rest. Ellie smiled, apparently satisfied with that answer. With the effortless simplicity only children possess, she returned to setting out the silverware, humming softly to herself. Logan watched her, committing that simple scene to memory. Yesterday's paper made it official, what their hearts already knew. They were family now, not by blood or obligation, but by choice, by love. The morning sun shone through the windows, illuminating the apartment he could finally call home. A home built on kept promises, shared courage, quiet new beginnings. That moment by moment were turning 2 broken lives into a story of redemption, a story that was only just beginning. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.